Millionaire's wife pushed her maid's disabled daughter into the pool. Seconds later, a voice froze everyone. Before dive, and please subscribe to the channel for more stories. The scream tore through the Georgia afternoon like broken glass. Music stopped. Laughter froze. Crystal champagne glasses hung midair as every guest turned toward the shimmering pool at the heart of the Brooks estate. Victoria Brooks, wife of Atlanta real estate mogul Richard Brooks, stood at the pool's edge, her pearl gown clinging to her frame, fury trembling behind her flawless smile. Her manicured hands shook, not from fear but from anger. Near the golden retriever wagging its tail stood a thin black girl, no older than 10, metal braces gripping both legs. Her name was Hope, though none of the million-dollar faces around her knew or cared. A woman in a black and white uniform broke from the catering line, voice cracking through the stunned silence. "Please, ma'am, she didn't mean any harm." That was Grace Harris, the Brooks family's maid. Sweat streaked her temples as she stumbled forward, glass from a drop tray glittering at her feet. Victoria's glare sliced through her. "I told you to keep her hidden. Can't you follow simple orders?" "She just wanted to pet the dog," Grace pleaded. "She's a child." "Then maybe she should learn her place." Victoria snapped, loud enough for every guest, and every whispering phone camera to hear. Gasps rippled. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Even the dog whined. Grace knelt beside her daughter, voice trembling. "Hope, sweetheart, it's okay." Victoria stepped closer, her shadow falling over them both. "No, it isn't." Before anyone could move, she shoved. The splash cracked through the silence like thunder. "Hope!" Grace's scream pierced the air as she dove into the water, uniform and all. The crowd gasped, filming, whispering, but not helping. The pool erupted in foam as Grace wrapped her arms around her daughter's small body, pulling her upward. "Breathe, baby, breathe." Hope coughed, sputtered, water streaming down her face. For one suspended moment, the world held its breath. The once perfect garden party, golden sunlight, music, laughter, had turned into a scene of horror. Grace dragged her daughter onto the marble tiles, her own clothes clinging like a second skin. The scent of chlorine mixed with champagne and expensive perfume. Victoria stood frozen, chest heaving. Her eyes darted between the terrified guests and the maid cradling her daughter. Then her chin lifted, pride stiffening her posture. "She slipped," she muttered. "Everyone saw that. She slipped." No one answered. Only the soft sound of dripping water and quiet sobs filled the air. Grace gathered Hope into her arms, rocking her, whispering prayers as sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Then a voice cut through the stillness like a blade. "What did you just do, Victoria?" Every head turned. Standing near the marble archway was Richard Brooks, the millionaire himself, tall, broad-shouldered, a storm in his eyes. His navy suit was damp at the cuffs, his champagne glass crushed in his hand. "Richard, she fell." Victoria stammered. "It was an accident." Everyone saw. Accident. His gaze shifted to the massive LED screen above the patio. The live feed from the event drone froze on one frame. Victoria's hand at Hope's back. A wave of horrified murmurs spread through the guests. "Get her inside," Richard ordered the security team, pointing toward Grace and her daughter. Then his voice hardened. "You and I will talk later." The words hit like a verdict. But before we reach this reckoning, let's step backward to where this nightmare began. Atlanta's skyline shimmered through drizzle, bright and indifferent. In a tiny two-bedroom apartment near Fulton Street, Grace Harris, age 43, sat beside her daughter's hospital bed. Machines beeped steadily. Hope's small legs lay motionless beneath white sheets. "She'll walk again," the doctor had said softly. "But it'll take years, therapy, braces, patience." Grace's husband had died 3 years prior. She worked nights cleaning offices, days scrubbing houses. When the accident happened, a speeding car at a red light, everything she had built collapsed. 2 days later, lawyers arrived with flowers and a thick envelope. They represented the Brooks family. The driver, they said, was Nathan Brooks, the Brooks' only son, 19, drunk, reckless. They called the envelope help. Sign here, the lawyer urged. It's best if it stays quiet. The boy's life shouldn't be ruined by one mistake. Grace looked at her daughter, at the mounting hospital bills, at the trembling hands that no longer dreamed, and she signed. A month later, a letter arrived. Full-time position available at the Brooks estate. Housekeeper. Lodging included. She didn't want it, but Hope's therapy didn't wait for pride. And so, Grace Harris walked into the mansion of the family who had broken her daughter's legs and bought her silence. The Brooks mansion sat high on Peachtree Avenue, a palace of glass and gold where wealth whispered like a secret. From the outside, it gleamed like success. Inside, it echoed with silence. Grace learned quickly that silence was her uniform. Each dawn, she polished the marble floors until her reflection looked back at her. She ironed Victoria's designer dresses, tended to imported roses, and served brunches thick with caviar and hypocrisy. "Try not to scuff the floors with those shoes, dear," Victoria would say in her sugar-sweet voice. "They're imported from Italy, not wherever you come from." "Yes, ma'am," Grace would murmur. Always yes, always quiet, because every yes meant therapy for Hope. Every bowed head meant survival. Victoria's friends came often, women with pearls and cruelty in equal measure. They'd sip rose in the sunroom, while Grace stood silently with a tray. I swear, one would laugh, "It's fashionable now. Hiring them. You're so charitable, Victoria." "Oh, Grace has been with us for years," Victoria would beam. Loyal, quiet, a little slow, but dependable. The words burned like acid, but Grace kept her eyes down. When guests left, Victoria's tone changed, sharp and cold. "Next time, polish the glasses properly. If they look dull, I look dull." "Yes, ma'am." "And keep your little girl out of sight when Richard brings clients over. It's unpleasant." That night, as Grace tucked Hope into the narrow servant's bed, the child whispered, "Mama, when I grow up, I'll help you clean so you don't get tired." Tears welled in Grace's eyes. "No, baby, you'll walk into a world that sees you for who you are." But deep down, she wasn't sure she believed her own promise. 5 years passed before a black limousine rolled up the Brooks driveway. Grace was polishing the stair rails when she heard Victoria's shrill excitement echo through the hall. "He's home. My baby's home." The doors opened, and Nathan Brooks stepped out. 24 now. Still handsome in that careless, golden boy way. His eyes, though, carried a shadow, something between guilt and weariness. "Mom," he muttered, hugging her loosely. "Looks the same." "Of course it does," Victoria replied brightly. "Everything's perfect, just like it was before." Grace lowered her gaze, hoping to vanish into the walls. "Grace." Victoria barked. "Take his luggage upstairs. East Wing. Fresh sheets. My son deserves comfort, not chaos." "Yes, ma'am." As Grace bent to lift the suitcases, Nathan's gaze caught hers. He blinked, almost startled. "You've worked here long?" he asked later, voice tentative. "Almost 5 years, sir." "Do you have a daughter?" Grace's throat tightened. "Yes, sir. I saw her outside the braces." His voice trailed off. "She reminds me of someone." "Children are strong," Grace said quietly. "They learn to live with what life gives them." He frowned, confused by her tone, but said nothing. That night, he couldn't sleep. The image of that little girl, the same smile, the same eyes, wouldn't leave him, because years ago, he'd been told she hadn't survived. Now, he knew that was a lie. 3 days after Nathan's return, Victoria swept into breakfast room, holding a tablet like a royal decree. Saturday night garden gala. Investors confirmed. No mistakes. I want perfection. Richard barely looked up from his paper. "You're hosting a party 2 days after Nathan gets home? Give it a week." She smiled tightly. "This deal could double our company's value. We can rest afterward." Across the room, Grace poured coffee silently. "Grace," Victoria said sharply, "I want every inch spotless. The marble, the glass, even the pool. And keep your daughter far from the guests. If she embarrasses me, you'll never work in the city again." "Yes, ma'am." Richard frowned. "That's enough, Victoria." She waved him off with a laugh. You know how I get under pressure. Pressure makes diamonds. Nathan, watching quietly, saw the way Grace's hand trembled as she set the coffee pot down. The days blurred together after that. Florists, decorators, lighting crews. Grace worked 16 hours straight, her palms raw. At night, she collapsed beside Hope's cot, whispering, "Just one more day, sweetheart." "Mama," Hope asked softly, "will I ever go to one of those fancy parties?" Grace smiled weakly. "Those parties aren't for us, baby. But I could wear my best dress. Say thank you to the nice people." Grace's heart twisted. "You already say thank you, Hope, every single day." By Saturday evening, the Brooks mansion glowed like a dream. String lights shimmering over manicured lawns, the pool reflecting a sky too calm for what was coming. "Welcome, everyone." Victoria's voice rang through the speakers, elegant and self-assured. "Tonight we celebrate a new era for Brooks Global." Applause, champagne, flashing cameras. Behind the floral arch, Grace stood with the catering staff, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Her eyes darted to the far corner of the garden where Hope sat quietly by the kennels, coloring in her notebook, braces glinting under fairy lights. "Angela, table 6, barked the event planner. "Yes, ma'am." Across the patio, Nathan leaned against the bar, staring at Hope. The realization burned through him. This was the little girl he'd left behind in broken metal and glass. He took a step forward, but it was already too late. Hope had noticed the golden retriever lying under a table. She smiled, rolled herself closer, and reached out a hand. "Good boy," she whispered. Then came the gasp. Victoria turned, fury contorting her perfect face. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she barked, striding across the patio. "Didn't I say to keep that little thing away from my guests?" The crowd went silent. Grace looked up just in time to see Victoria storming toward her daughter. "Victoria, please," she cried, running forward. The tray slipped from her hands, plates shattering across the marble. But Victoria didn't stop. "This is my home, my event, and I will not have her ruining it." She shoved. Hope's chair caught the edge of the tile. The back wheels lifted. Then splash. "Hope!" Grace's scream shattered the night as she dove into the pool. Guests gasped. Phones lifted. No one moved. Water foamed as Grace fought the weight of her soaked uniform, pulling her daughter to the surface. "Breathe, baby, breathe." A cough. Then another. Hope was alive. But the world around them had gone still. Victoria's voice cracked. She slipped? Everyone saw. The lie hung in the air like smoke. Then came the voice. "What did you just do, Victoria?" Richard stood at the pool's edge, eyes blazing. I, she startled me. "You pushed a child. A disabled child." "No, that woman shouldn't have brought her here. You said tonight had to be perfect, and she... Do you hear yourself?" His voice thundered. "That woman has more dignity in her pain than you've ever shown in your privilege." The crowd silence turned sharp. He pointed toward the LED screen. It replayed the moment again, the shove, the splash, the horror. Victoria's world collapsed in that single frame. Police lights flashed red and blue over the manicured hedges. "Mrs. Brooks," Officer Ramirez said quietly, "you're under arrest for assault and endangerment of a minor." "This is insane." Victoria screamed. "I'm the victim here." But no one listened. Cameras filmed as she was handcuffed, mascara running down her cheeks. Richard stood motionless, his empire crumbling. He turned to Grace and Hope as paramedics arrived. "She'll be okay," he said softly. "You have my word." Grace met his eyes. "Sir, this house was built on silence. Maybe tonight it finally speaks." Northside Hospital was quiet except for the hum of machines. Hope slept under a warm blanket, breathing softly. Grace sat beside her, eyes swollen from tears. A knock sounded. Richard stood in the doorway, his face pale, his tie undone. Beside him was Nathan, his expression hollow. "How is she?" Richard asked. "Stable," Grace whispered. He exhaled. "Grace, I came to apologize. I didn't know what my wife was capable of." "It wasn't just a day," Grace said softly. It's been years. He nodded, shame darkening his gaze. Then Nathan stepped forward, voice breaking. Mrs. Harris, I need to tell you something. Grace looked up. Go on. 5 years ago, the accident, it was me. I was the driver. My parents told me she didn't survive. They paid you instead of letting me face it. Grace froze. The air left her lungs. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I thought about her every day. I thought I'd killed her. Grace covered her mouth, sobs shaking her shoulders. Richard's voice cracked. Neither of us can undo it, but we can make it right. He took a deep breath. I'm creating something, a foundation for children like Hope. Therapy, education, legal help. It'll be called the Hope Foundation. Grace stared at him. Why? Because I've spent my life building towers that hide pain. It's time I build something that heals it. Nathan dropped to his knees beside Hope's bed. Please, Mrs. Harris, let me help. Let me earn forgiveness. Grace's voice softened. You start by showing up. Every day. Not for guilt, for good. Outside, dawn broke over Atlanta. Spring sunlight washed over the city. Where scandal once bloomed, a new building now stood. White stone glass walls and gold letters that read, The Hope Foundation. Inside, laughter echoed through the halls. Children embraces, wheelchairs, and bright smiles filling the space Grace once cleaned in silence. Reporters filled the lobby as Richard Brooks stood at the podium beside Nathan and Grace. Today, he said, isn't about wealth. It's about healing, and about one brave little girl who reminded us what humanity really means. He turned toward Hope, standing proudly beside her mother, her small hands gripping the podium. Her braces still gleamed, but she stood taller now, stronger. The applause thundered. Nathan leaned down and whispered, We'll spend our lives making this right. Grace smiled faintly. Maybe we already started. When the ribbon was cut, Richard turned to her. You should do the honors. Grace's hands trembled as she lifted the golden scissors. The blades clicked, slicing through silk and history alike. The crowd erupted. Later, when the reporters were gone, Grace and Hope stepped into the quiet sunlight outside. Look, Mama, Hope whispered, taking a cautious step forward. Then another, and another. Her braces clicked softly, but her legs held. Grace covered her mouth, tears falling freely. You're walking, baby. You're really walking. Hope turned, eyes shining. You said truth gives people strength. Grace nodded, voice trembling. Yes, sweetheart. Truth sets you free. The city skyline shimmered gold as mother and daughter held hands. For years, Grace said softly, looking into the camera of a local journalist, I stayed silent to survive, but silence protects the wrong people. The day I chose truth, I didn't just save my daughter. I found my voice. She smiled gently, holding Hope's hand, and now that voice will speak for others. The screen faded to black. Soft piano music rose, and in gold letters appeared the words, The Hope Foundation, where truth heals,